Opening night of the NBA season is close. It's Tuesday, October 18th. Do you think the Golden State Warriors can repeat? To celebrate the start of the season, we are offering you a 7-day NBA package for only $49. Yes, that's only $7 a day, and it will be valid through Sunday, October 23rd at both WagerTalk and Sports Memo. There is no limit to the number of handicappers that you can get. Just head to your favorite capper's homepage.
Welcome, everybody, to Inside the Distance. I am Andy Lang from WagerTalk.com. After a week off, we are here to preview UFC Fight Night. We have Alexa Grasso and Viviane Araujo joining me, as always, my fellow Inside the Distance compadres. We've got Kyle Anthony from WagerTalk.com, Matt Kowalis from SportsMemo.com. Gentlemen, we've got a Fight Night, interesting card. We have been looking at I think we've been looking ahead to these next couple cards that are coming up, but don't ignore this one. Very bettable, very, very gettable. We're going to break down the main event. We're going to get into fights that are really interesting to us, and then we're going to give a Parlay Buster, our fight to go the distance or not to go the distance. Then we're going to give a Moneyline play minus 200 or better. But, gentlemen, we cannot predict the future if we don't learn from the past, so we are going to take a trip to the classroom. We got to just take a look back at the last event and what did we learn from the last event. I will start us off, gentlemen. Listen, I watched two women known as submission specialists struggle mightily in the grappling and wrestling department. They both gassed themselves. They got beat by opponents with superior striking. And when we look at the Mackenzie Dern fight, round one, she shoots for takedowns, couldn't really get them. Round two, kept going for him. She did get Jan down on the ground, got close, but she used so much energy. When she came out for round three, you could just see nothing left in the gas tank. And you could get her at plus 160. You can get Jan at plus 160 in round three, then down to plus 120, and then the line just dropped to minus 190. So you could just see Mackenzie Dern didn't have enough. She ends up taking 46 leg kicks, 53 headshots, and Mackenzie Dern has now lost 2 of 3. Her submission wins are still only over Nina Nunez, Rhonda Marcos, Hannah Cyphers, and Amanda Cooper. And earlier in the fight, we saw Stoliarenko and Chandler. Same story, except it gets done in the first round. Stoliarenko gets an early takedown, can't get the submission. Chandler flips it and gets it back on the feet several times. Before you know it, Chandler just gets the KO. I guess my point to this, at least for myself and for everybody, is when we're handicapping these submission specialists, we really need to look hard at how their wrestling and how their grappling are when they're going up against these superior opponents, when they're going up against these stronger opponents. If you're going to work for a submission, you've got to get the takedowns, you've got to get the grappling, you've got to get the wrestling, and you got to look at how good the opponents are with their defense, their wrestling, and how strong they are. I feel like sometimes when we're looking at, I'm thinking of Mackenzie Dern just off the top of my head. We just, submission. Well, not against Jan when Jan is stronger, faster, and better on the feet. So when we're looking at these submission specialists, we've got to look at some of the other aspects of their ground game. Kyle, coming to you, what did you learn from the last event?
Well, I think the one thing here that is probably worth talking about, because as you just said, I mean, we've got some big cards coming up down the road. We've got some big pay-per-views coming up that are really going to be awesome. People are going to be hyped about. And we're kind of smack in the middle of kind of a low-level card coming up this weekend, and not the greatest card when we're talking about just excitement, no names, recognizable names. And really what we got to start looking at is these low-level cards, and it's something I've always done, and I'm sure my co-host here, same, is it's just worth talking about, is these low-level cards have betting value. And I think that a lot of people get so excited about these big cards, they get so excited about it, and then when these low cards come, even cappers I hear, outside of the company, kind of like, hey, this is a terrible card, and then you're already downplaying any type of value. You're not looking for the value. I mean, kind of putting it into perspective, those people will then go bet Bellator and PFL, but then they're, downplaying a UFC card. And it's kind of like the same thing with, football. Tonight there's, Washington versus Chicago. Not the sexiest football game. But we're looking for value. We're not looking just for entertainment. Andy's a prop guy. He's looking for props. He's looking for angles, mispriced props, opportunities to put your money in strong positions. That's really what we're looking to do. And then you've got, Super Bowl comes up, right? Everybody's excited about the Super Bowl. Everybody's hammering it. Doesn't mean that there's good value there. It's just excitement. So when you're looking at this, you're really looking for not entertainment. You're looking for value. You're looking for opportunities to make money. And I think people can get kind of carried away with that. And last weekend, we, ended up bringing in for clients about 7 units on a very crappy card. No offense, Mackenzie Dern, but not the greatest card. And I think just moving forward, those are things that we really need as cappers, as people that are really paying attention to the UFC, that you just don't overlook these bad cards, because there's value if you're really diving in. And like I always say, there's no off season for UFC, 52 weeks, 45 events roughly about. There's always opportunity to find some value. So don't overlook the low cards, and don't get too excited and overbet when you have these pay-per-views where everybody and you're excited. So it's definitely something to keep in mind.
How dare you say this is a low-level card when we get Nate Rodriguez versus Mike Jackson, Kyle? How dare you? Hey, we can cash on the KO on that fight.
That's true.
Angles.
Absolutely. Matt, coming to you, what did you learn from the last event?
Yeah, guys, I appreciate both of your points, because I feel like mine ties in with that as well. And it's don't force multiple plays if you're confident in one play in particular. And a lot of this has to do with the fights that I chose last week. My chosen fights were John Castaneda versus Daniel Santos, which I liked Santos and I liked him inside the distance. Both happened. In the Dern versus Jan fight, I liked Jan and I liked the over 2.5 rounds. Both happened. I bring this up only because I only played the over Dern and Jan over at Sports Memo at 2.5 rounds. Had that as a 3-unit play. We hit. But when looking at the other underdog plays, I honestly got in my head a little bit about it and started thinking, okay, if these two lost, how is everyone going to perceive my record? When in reality, you just have to keep playing your game. This is the UFC. There's going to be ups. There's going to be downs. There's going to be a guy you love who gets knocked out in the first round. Happened to me. Maybe I was a little gun shy. But I really did learn a valuable lesson with this card, and it's just sticking to your game. Don't sweat the past results. Stay the path. It's all part of the game. This is the UFC.
Love it. Matt, you've got your UFC pack up at sportsmemo.com. Kyle's got his 4% pack up at wagertalk.com. I've got my 4% pack at wagertalk.com. And gentlemen, we're going to break down Grasso and Araujo. Real quick, before we do that, I have to ask you guys this. Sorry, graphics team. I know you hate me right now. Kyle, do we need a rule in UFC like we have in other sports that you have to disclose injuries? John Castaneda announces, it looked awful, and then he announces, I had bronchitis. And then Latifi in the ring says, by the way, I have a staph infection in my leg, and I didn't even tell my coaches. What was that? I guess it's a very layered question. It's very complex. But, people are betting money on that. That's why they have the rules in some of these other sports. Kyle, do we need something where they have to disclose this stuff?
I definitely get it, because it is hearing Latifi say that, you're like, wait, what did he just say? And then Twitter goes nuts about, I guess everyone's going to get this. He's going to spread like wildfire. But the only difference, I think, in this is that guys don't want to really talk about their weaknesses, or they're prize fighters, they're fighting for money. If they kind of say, hey, I'm not feeling that good, or whatever it is, I'm pretty sure, and kind of like football too, I'm pretty sure a lot of guys are playing with injuries or just hurt, not something serious that may hinder them. So it does start to tilt against, do you want to talk about it or do you not want to talk about it? And a lot of guys, I've never seen a guy in an interview say, you know what, this was a really terrible camp. I had a terrible camp. I feel terrible. My coach hardly show up. I'm feeling sick. Nobody says that. They talk about it after, as you can see. So I don't really think that they're going to kind of get into that. I think that it's a mixing kind of thing. They wanted to tell everybody, best shape of my life, best camp I ever had. So it's a little bit different, but I do agree. It's a frustrating thing when you hear that on a fighter that you had taken.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, Castaneda put out a video from the hospital. Bronchitis.
That's
This guy was
insane.
in a professional fight 2 days earlier. I don't know, Matt, what do you think? Is there any way we can get fighters to disclose their injuries?
Yeah, I mean, from the bettor's perspective, you definitely understand it, and it's definitely very frustrating. But, like, if a fighter discloses their injury, you know, it's a war. You're going in a cage. I would definitely assume that another fighter is going to try and target that. If you disclose that you have bronchitis, you might jab and kind of go around the ring a little bit to draw the fight out a little more because you know he's going to get tired. So I think it is tough. And then from another angle, a lot of these lower level fighters really do depend on that fight paycheck. You know, they're not getting big sponsors like some of the other guys. So I do understand why they're kind of just putting it under the rug until that fight, just so they can get their paycheck and, you know, live their life. So personally, I don't think we're going to see a change, but I definitely understand the frustration from a better standpoint.
It's just the staph infection I never told my coaches is just an all-time coach.
They turned around and said, what did that guy say?
And honestly, I think that might be a money thing. They might just want to collect that check. You know, they got to live too.
Yeah, probably. You're right. It's, you know, when it's a team sport, it's one thing. When it's one-on-one, I mean, you're right. If Latifi says 2 days before the fight, I got a staph infection, you know, it's, you know, leg central for an attack, you know, not that Olenek could have attacked anything with any force. So, all right, guys, Kyle, coming to you first. Main event breakdown. This is going to be, I actually think this is going to be a surprisingly entertaining fight, especially in the first few rounds. So what do you like in Grasso versus Araujo?
Yeah, this one here I think is actually interesting, and there are a lot of layers. I know, again, it's not the highest level fight, so everybody relax. But the one thing that they both do really well is they do a lot of movement, a lot of footwork, a lot of moving around the cage, and they both actually strike very differently. You've got Viviane who really big movements, big power. She doesn't have knockout power, but she throws everything with 100% power. Where you've got, on the other side, you got Grasso, who's more technical, more sharper. Her strikes are probably going to get to the target a little bit quicker compared to what Viviane does. But the biggest red flag for me when you're looking at what Viviane does is her cardio. I mean, she has not very good cardio, as she's 36 years old now. Don't see that changing at any point at this point. But I don't think it's just the cardio or she doesn't have good cardio. I think it's bad cardio management on top of that, because she does the same thing every single fight in the first round and a half, where big movements, she's bouncing around the cage a lot. She's, you know, almost looks like, wow, she must be able to do this through the fight. And then she slows down and slows down and slows down. And even you've got, I think Grasso, kind of her weapon is she does have cardio. So she's able to use that. I think she's able to put out a little bit of volume. And her own weakness had been grappling. And that's something that, hey, maybe Viviane could take advantage of. Maybe Viviane could get the takedowns. That's also takes a lot of energy to continually fuel these takedowns. But you've also seen that Grasso has looked better on these grappling exchanges, these clinching exchanges, even against Barber. Barber is a big, bruising female, big ground and pound. She was able to reverse out of a tough position. So there are definitely spots there where I think that she can have and find success. And if you really put it all together here, 5 rounds is really going to be really going to be helping out Grasso, because after the first round or two, I think it's a great live betting opportunity. I think that first round, you could maybe see it being close, or you could see how good, wow, Viviane looks great. And I think even the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, I really think that that's where Grasso is going to shine. I think it's going to be close in those first 2, and I think she's going to play through the entire fight. So I actually like Grasso by points here. It's plus 130, plus 125 in that range. You're getting off the big number. I think it's a likely path. Grasso has 14 wins professionally. 9 of them have been decisions. And I think the reason why you're getting some plus money or a little bit better than that is because that the most recent fight, I mean, she ended up choking out Joanne Wood. No offense to Joanne Wood, but she didn't know what the heck to do on the ground. That kind of fell, choked her out. So I think that the plus money here is a nice spot, and I think that's where it goes. I mean, it goes 5 rounds, and I think she gets the decision victory, and I think it's worth the plus money there.
Matt, sportsmemo.com. What do you like in this main event?
Yeah, so I'm right with Kyle here. I think this is a great live betting opportunity, and here's why. With Grasso, I think she could struggle potentially with Viviane in the early rounds with takedowns, with physicality. If this was a 3-round fight, I would probably go with Viviane. But the fact that it's a 5-round fight does change things for me. She has struggled with cardio in the past. When you go back and look at Viviane's past fights, majority of them she has outstruck her opponents. But when you look a little bit further, you peel that onion, take a look at the 3rd round. In almost every single 3rd round fight, she has been outstruck, which means that gas tank is slowly going. Also, to Kyle's point, she throws 100% with every single punch. She puts a lot of effort in her grapple game, in pushing against the cage and things of that nature. So she does. I think it is that gas tank management, and I don't know if we're going to see that once again. In terms of Grasso, she has been a high-volume striker, and she's been able to do that every single round. She's been able to create the same pace almost every single round, which, again, I think dives into Grasso and shows that Viviane can fade as the fight goes on. This is a play that I'm confident enough to put it up on Sports Memo as well, with Grasso in the decision, like Kyle said, plus 130. But again, diving into the earlier point, I think it's a very good live betting opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Viviane came out and took the 1st round, potentially even took the 2nd round. Do not panic. In the past, again, Viviane has tailed as the fights have gone on. She's 35 years old now to Grasso's 29, so she's not getting any younger here. I'm going to side with Grasso, and it's a pretty confident pick for me.
I'm going to attempt to look at this a little bit different way, and I'm going to start with the just terrible level of competition that Alexa Grasso has faced. I mean, let's examine these 3 wins here real quick, okay? So Ji Young Kim, she's 0-4 in her last 4 fights. Joanne Wood, 0-3 in her last 3 fights. And then Macy Barber, who has won her last 3 fights, except she didn't win the fight against Miranda Maverick. That was a loss. And then she comes back and beats Montana. It beats De La Rosa, who has 1 win in her last 4 fights, and then Jessica Ai, who's lost like 4 in a row. So I'm going to push back and say I don't think this is a steamroll, and I think the odds are a little bit too in favor. I will say for Araujo, I liked what I saw against Andrea Lee. 10 minutes, 40 seconds of control time, 3 for 5 on takedowns. I think that needs to be her plan. She needs to work takedowns and try and manage that cardio. She has good clinch work. She's shown it when she can get on the ground. I thought Macy Barber was able to land some pretty good strikes on Grasso, and Carla Esparza had over 7 minutes of control time with multiple takedowns. I'm certainly not comparing Araujo to Carla Esparza, but I've seen some holes in Grasso's game. Maybe Viviane can get it done early, and maybe she can weather the storm of her lack of cardio. I don't know. I'm trying to take the opposite side here, guys. And I think the biggest hole is just who Grasso has beaten, and to be, it's just not very impressive. So I do love her striking. I think she should be the rightful favorite. She probably does get it done, especially if it gets out of the 2nd and into the 3rd round. But I would throw a little bit of a caution, because I think this is one of her best opponents, if not the best she's had in a while. So, all right, guys, that is the main event for the card. We are going to move into our next segment, which is fights to watch. These are fights that are interesting to us. Could be a betting angle, some kind of strategy that we like. Matt, I'm going to come to you first. This one is getting more and more interesting as the week moves on. So talk to us about the fight you're excited to watch this weekend.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch Askar Askarov and Brandon Royval. And personally, I think this has potential to be fight of the night. And stylistically, I think it's very interesting. Askar Askarov comes into this fight 14-1-1 with losses to Kai Kara France and a draw to interim champion Brandon Moreno. And then as for Brandon Royval, he comes into this fight 14-6 after a win streak to Kai Kara France and wins against Tim Elliott. And on paper, Brandon Royval and Askar Askarov are pretty similar. They have about the same reach advantage with 68 inches. Their height, Brandon Royval is 5'8", Askar Askarov is 5'6". And again, stylistically, I think this is a pretty interesting matchup because no guy is exceptional on the feet. You know, Brandon Royval is a submission artist, and Askar Askarov loves to shoot for takedowns. He loves the scrambles and stuff like that. And I think that could be pretty interesting just because of Brandon Royval and how good he is as a submission artist. You know, if Askar Askarov wins this fight, I believe it goes to a decision. I don't think he finishes Royval. But if Royval were to win, I do think that he wins this fight via submission. And there are some interesting angles via submission. You know, the first round is plus 1,200. The second round is plus 2,500. And the last round is plus 3,800 in terms of odds. So some high odds plays in terms of Brandon Royval submitting Askar Askarov. And I understand why it's so high. Askarov is very calm on the ground. If he ever does get into trouble, he doesn't panic. He works his way out of it. He's very solid in terms of grappling, and he is solid in terms of striking as well. I think Brandon Royval is a different stylistic matchup for him, too. He likes to throw his kicks, kind of got a longer frame, somewhat similar to Brandon Moreno, who Askar Askarov had that draw with, and I actually thought Brandon Moreno won that fight. So, again, when comparing past fighters to now, I think this is going to be a really good matchup for the fans to watch. And then this is also one of those fights for Askar Askarov. If he gets past Royval, it's going to catapult him to a different level of fighters that we'll see him facing next. So I think it's a big stepping stone fight for him, and I think it's a very interesting matchup for Royval as well with his submission talents.
Yeah, certainly a fight that's going to be one of the more entertaining ones on the card. Great stuff from Matt Kowalis from sportsmemo.com. I will take the next fight. I am excited to watch Cub Swanson versus Jonathan Martinez. So we know what Martinez is going to do. He's going to utilize his kicks. I just think this minus 205 line is pretty insane. His last three wins are to Vince Morales, Alejandro Perez, and Lajavili making his UFC debut. One of my pet peeves, guys, is fighters who stay at the perfect range for the opposing fighter to land jabs or kicks. And that's what all three of those guys did. They just set themselves up to eat kick after kick from Martinez. He didn't have to work into position. He didn't have to move around. They just stood in front of him and ate leg kicks and ate body kicks. And, you know, he's got wins against Thomas Almeida and Frankie Saenz, not great competition. But he lost to Davey Grant and Andre Ewell, and I don't think Cub Swanson is just going to stand there and let Martinez tee off on calf kicks and body kicks. Listen, Swanson's 38. He's past his prime, but he's won 3 out of 4. His loss was to Giga on an absolutely brutal liver kick. But his last 2 wins have come by KO. I think he's going to push forward, and I think he's going to crowd Martinez. If you can push Martinez out of the kicking range, you've got a real shot to do damage. Martinez does not like to get hit in the body, and I think that is Swanson's path to victory. He's probably going to have to knock out Martinez if this goes the distance and goes to decision. My guess is it's heavily in the favor of Martinez. Just don't be surprised if Swanson uses a lot different movement, especially in round 1, to kind of confuse Martinez, get Martinez away from those leg kicks and body kicks. I think Swanson can cause him some problems. If he can get in the clinch, he can do some damage to the body. I don't think this is a walk-over fight for Jonathan Martinez, as the line suggests. I'm excited to see if Cub Swanson still has something left in the tank, so that's going to be my fight I'm going to be keeping my eye on. Kyle, we've got your next fight coming up, and Victor Henry is involved. He was a massive underdog in his first fight, and now, boy, have the odds turned. Now he's a massive favorite. This is your fight to watch. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the storyline in this fight, and I think it's more the path that Victor took. I mean, the fact that he was grinding out on the regional scene for his whole career, 26 fights, finally gets to the UFC, short notice against who was against Barcelos, and he looked fantastic. Big underdog, goes out there, looks good. I think Barcelos kind of took him lightly, thought that, hey, I can just kind of stand, bang with them, didn't really do much else, wasn't looking for takedowns, wasn't looking to kind of implement the game plan that he can really put to his opponents. He just stood there and fought with them, and the volume, the pressure, and the output really was impressive, I think, from Victor Henry on a big spot for him to step up and take the competition out. He ended up beating him 30-27 across the board, which is, again, impressive for who he is fighting. But on the other side here, you know, you got the legend, you know, you got Assuncao. The guy is fought very tough competition over his career, and I think that's also a big part of this when you look at it. You know, you got a guy who has fought killers his whole career. He's definitely at the end of his career. You look at even the ages, you know, ages aren't that far either. It's not like Victor Henry's this young up-and-comer. He's 35, got Assuncao, who's 40, obviously more damage that he has on him. But he's lost 4 straight. 2 of them were brutal KO losses. And it's interesting to see now what he's going to do, how he's going to actually fight against a guy who has probably better overall skill set, but it has really changed. To your point, Andy, now it's, you know, minus 400. I think the line continues to move up here. But I think if he gets the win, if Victor Henry goes out there and gets this win, it's going to put him in a pretty nice spot, you know, moving up, maybe fighting a top 10 guy, maybe fighting somebody else. So I think it really is interesting to see what he does against a guy of Assuncao's caliber, even though his chin is pretty much gone. But still, I think it brings some interesting angles to watch. So I think it's something to check out.
Yeah. Kyle, follow up on this one. Chris Curtis, Victor Henry, 2 guys that very similar paths. Regional scene, don't really hear from them a whole lot. They come to UFC and have enjoyed success right off the bat. Is this something we're going to see more of with, you know, with all of these scenes? The sport as a whole is just getting better. And, you know, quite frankly, we have more scouts and we have more eyes on some of these regional scenes. You know, you got to wonder in the last, you know, 15, 20 years, how many amazing fighters just couldn't get a shot. So is this something that we might see moving forward? These guys that are, you know, early 30s hitting their prime?
Yeah, I think actually it's absolutely. I think it's a great question because not, you know, long ago, there wasn't all of these organizations that really had talent, that really were built up. It was very, very regional, where it was like you couldn't really breed these guys. It was like UFC, and then it was like really nothing else. Now you've got, you know, Bellator was even kind of a joke then. Now it's all kind of getting together. They're mixing some UFC guys, you know, moving into other organizations, fighting better caliber guys. So I think there's no doubt that it's kind of like, I guess maybe like the minor leagues, you know, it's kind of a good flowing program for them. Even with Dana White's Contender Series, I mean, it's giving guys a better chance to kind of get into the UFC, have the coaching, you know, kind of get used to the bigger limelight. And so I think it definitely is a nice flow of talent coming in. And I think you're seeing that across the board, I think, on all really divisions. You're definitely seeing more crop, better talent kind of coming up through. And I think some of those guys may have not even been seeing it without some of these organizations kind of really kind of putting them on a pedestal to get the looks.
Matt, you follow the sport, I mean, as closely as anybody. What's your take on these guys like Victor Henry and Chris Curtis? We're just going to see more and more of these guys. They get opportunities and come in and take advantage of them?
Yeah, I think so. It's a great thing as well. You know, I love seeing a guy like Victor Henry get that chance. He's a huge underdog and just, you know, fight for his life, essentially. And now he's getting another great opportunity and he can make something of it. And to your guys' point earlier, the UFC is only expanding. This is not a sport that's just in the United States. This is a worldwide sport and it's only growing, and the UFC is actually making that a focal point as well. You see all the fighters coming over from China, Brazil, kind of just all over the place. And as things continue too, you see past fighters opening up fight leagues, essentially. You know, Nate Diaz just left. He might be opening up one. Wouldn't be surprised if the next Conor fight is with his new fight league. But with that being said, you're also breeding talented fighters. You know, there are going to be fighters who are under that trainer who are going to be coming up in that league. So now that this is occurring, to Kyle's point, it's like a minor league. And once they come up and get that chance, it might not be like it used to be. It might not be a walk in the park. They're going to be getting some tough fights that they could potentially lose. And I think it's our job to dive into those lines to see if there's any angle where we could get someone like a Victor Henry to come in and win an underdog fight like that and get a nice payday.
Good stuff. That is Matt Kowalis at sportsmemo.com. He's got his UFC pack up. Kyle's got his 4% UFC pack up at WagerTalk.com. All right, gentlemen, we're going to go into our featured segments here. Kyle made an incredible call on the Parlay Buster last event with Randy Brown, which I think he was right on. I even had a bet on Randy Brown, and I thought he lost that one. So
Close, man.
It's an amazing call. What is Randy Brown doing in that fight? Like, dude. All right, I'm going to start off with my Parlay Buster. This is the fight that I think people are going to put in their parlays. Dusko Todorovic. So let me get this straight. We're going to put a guy who's over minus 200, who has lost 3 out of 4, been knocked out hard by Soriano in January of 2021, and who took a brutal elbow by Chitty. He's going to be a minus 200 favorite in a fight where both guys are just going to come out swinging hard and often. No way. No way I'm taking either one of these fighters. And I'm definitely not taking a minus 200 fighter in this. Jordan Wright's last 3 losses are to Barrios, Bruno Silva, and Joaquin Buckley. And listen, Wright's last 3 wins are knockouts. This is just a pick'em fight to me. Either a guy is going to land a flash KO, but for the books to price this, that it's just so obvious that Todorovic is going to win and going to be the one to get the KO is crazy. Do not put this in your parlay. I even think they've priced the unders, even under 1.5 rounds is like minus 300 or 400 or something crazy. So we know it's going to end early, but stay away from Todorovic. You don't want him in your parlays. Not in a fight that's going to be this crazy. So, Matt, coming to you. I'm excited to hear your take on this fight. You're going to talk about a fight that's either definitely going to go the distance or not the distance. So what fight did you pick for your distance fight?
Yeah, so my pick for the distance fight is actually Cub Swanson versus Jonathan Martinez. And I know what people are thinking, Cub Swanson's got the weight cut, Jonathan Martinez a little chinny. But when you look at the rest of this card with like the fight you just talked about, Dusko versus Jordan Wright, minus 800 to not go the distance, all right? So limited pickings. But either way, Cub Swanson, 45% decision rate. Jonathan Martinez, 45% decision rate. And 70% decision rate since hitting the UFC, okay? I think this is the most probable outcome. And when it comes to styles, if Jonathan Martinez wins this fight, I very much believe it's by decision. He doesn't take it to the ground very often. He's not the most powerful guy in the world, and he loves his leg kicks. I think he throws more leg kicks than he does punches. So really, the only way I see Cub Swanson getting caught is maybe from a front kick or a side head kick or something along those lines. And Cub Swanson is very experienced, been in the UFC a long time. This will be a fight, he's very used to, he's very accustomed to. So I don't think he's going to be surprised by anything. Now, on the other side, when looking at Cub Swanson, if this fight doesn't go the distance, I think it's a Cub Swanson knockout. Jonathan Martinez has been a little chinny in the past. Cub Swanson is definitely the better boxer, a more unorthodox boxer as well that Jonathan Martinez hasn't really seen before. Jonathan Martinez has been knocked out before by Davey Grant, and when I looked back at that fight and saw that knockout, it did remind me somewhat of Cub Swanson as well and the different angles that he throws from. But in my head, what I think is going to occur is Jonathan Martinez, if he's getting beat with the boxing, he has been known to shoot every now and then when he's in trouble. Could try that, or just stay to the outside of the cage, dance around, mix in those leg kicks, because Cub Swanson is a very good boxer. He still has power in those hands, and I think he could shock Martinez to the point that keeps him to the edge of the cage and just wants to try and dance around, point chase. But again, with Cub Swanson, I think if he is applying that pressure on Jonathan Martinez, is winning the boxing battle, I like Cub Swanson in this fight over Jonathan Martinez. And if there was a pick, I would be Cub Swanson decision and KO. But this fight in general, I think the best outcome is a decision here.
Yeah, don't forget the double chance bets that Matt did a good job breaking down on our last episode. Kyle, You got a heads up money line at -200 or less, and you've picked a fight. I'm excited to hear you break down because I have a pick in this one for clients. So, what do you think about Amanda Martinez and Brandon Davis here?
Well, this one here, I think, is more of a fade on Brandon Davis than it is really being big on Amanda Martinez here. So, listen, Martinez, one in two out of his last three. We lost to Drake Rodriguez, beat Brito Canetti, and then also Ronnie Lawrence. He ended up losing to. But he's got good counter striking. He has power. I think he's actually got some power. The aggressive style too, that I think that he does like as well too. And I like how he smoothly switches stances from southpaw to orthodox as well. Now the big thing here is the way he finds success is really having that willing dance partner that's gonna bang, gonna be throwing big shots. And now enter Brandon Davis. Now this guy here is I like betting this guy as a dog. I'm not gonna lie about it. He's the kind of guy that you want to look to bet with that, but he is so defensively irresponsible when he's in the pocket. He leaves his chin up. He's chinny. Also, the fact that he doesn't even use his grappling. He's a guy that.
Kyle was breaking down Brandon Davis there. I could jump in here because I know exactly where he's going with this, Matt. So I'll finish off Kyle's thoughts here. So this Brandon Davis, he had a shot in the UFC years ago. He lost to Giga, lost to Kyung Ho Kang, and then he went to the Gulf Coast MMA League. Matt, did you know this one exists?
That's a new one to me.
Okay. Well, he did very well in the Gulf Coast League. So he had a couple decisions. He had a submission, and then he had a KO. And I watched his fight where he KO'd Josh Huber. And let's just say Josh Huber is not UFC ready. It was so slow that it was just a very, very slow fight. He gets the KO, and so then he comes back in. He does UFC a complete solid by going up against Batcherel and just gets knocked on his behind. Kyle, do we have you back?
What is happening, man?
Well, I went over Brandon Davis's career in the Gulf Coast MMA League, which is one Matt's never heard of, and
that's a new one to me.
Yeah, so we talked about how he came back and filled in last second for Batcherel, and of course, when you fill in last second, Dana always does you a solid and gives you a couple more fights. But I'll let you finish up talking about stylistic. I kind of went over just his last few fights.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of go back to it, I don't know where I was lost at this point, but really the big part is that Davis has a lot of MMA mileage on him. He is a guy that has been battled. He has been in wars. He's chinny. He's a kind of guy that's defensively irresponsible, doesn't really backpedal and look to kind of play defense here. And if you look at what really happened in his career, after he was, done with the, UFC was done with him on his first stint, he went to the regional scene. He ended up going 4-0, which is great, but he beat guys that were 5-3, 24-29, not the highest caliber of guys. And even those guys were landing shots on him. These are low-level guys, and they were still landing shots on him, which, again, comes back to that's kind of the way that Martinez wants to fight. He wants to fight in the pocket. He wants to be aggressive. And as to your point, Andy, which I kind of heard, when he came back, he fought Dana Baggarel after going 4-0 and got knocked out in the first round, which, again, Baggarel, he's all right. He's got some power, but he's a guy that's going to be another willing dance partner. Overall, in the UFC, he's 1-5 out of his last 6 when he gets into the UFC. So that also, when he fights this caliber of fighters, it just doesn't really sit well with him. The only victory that he ended up having was against Randy Costa, who we all kind of thought Randy was going to be a pretty solid fighter. He's 0-3 now, has not looked good. So I think that Martinez can put a pace on him. I think he can get in his face. This is another spot where I think both guys, I kind of like the under here as well, because I think both guys are going to be battling, going to be throwing big shots. So I go with Martinez here. I think that the price is all right. I think that this is Davis's swan song. I mean, if he gets knocked out again, that's 1 in 6 out of his last 7. I think the guy's done. So I do like Martinez.
Great stuff from Kyle there. Yeah, man, that fight against Ronnie Lawrence was awesome. Like, if you want a good fight to go back and what, that was an amazing, amazing fight. Don't turn it off in the first or second round. You want to watch all the way through that third round, because that was an awesome one to research. So, all right, gentlemen, great stuff. It's Matt Kowalis has got his UFC plays up at sportsmemo.com. That is Kyle Anthony. He's got a 4% pack up at WagerTalk.com. I'm Andy Lang. I've got a 4% pack up at WagerTalk.com. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Drop us a comment. Let us know what you guys think and who you're liking this weekend. Gentlemen, thank you so much. After this week, it's big names. So we got some huge fights and huge cards to break down. Should be really fun. But as always, every card is very bettable and profitable. So thank you guys for joining us. Thanks to everybody. Jim says if he wins big this weekend, he's buying Kyle a new modem. So let's I'll
take it.
That was good. That was
buy
good.
my plays and then buy me a modem.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good underdogs. There's some good underbets too. You can get some plus money plays on this card.
Oh, so
let's get it going.
All right, gentlemen, let's have a profitable weekend. We'll be back next week on Inside the Distance. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Opening night of the NBA season is close. It's Tuesday, October 18th. Do you think the Golden State Warriors can repeat? To celebrate the start of the season, we are offering you a 7-day NBA package for only $49. Yes, that's only $7 a day, and it will be valid through Sunday, October 23rd at both WagerTalk and SportsMemo. There is no limit to the number of handicappers that you can get. Just head to your favorite capper's homepage.